So thank you, Rabbi Brown, for filling in. Let's go back to the Gemara that he yeah. So the Mishnah is interesting, right? We have Ola Sa'op and Ola Sachatas, the bird Ola offering and the bird sin offering. And the Ola Sa'op has to be brought above the red line you put the blood on, and the Olas and the Chatas Sa'op goes below. So the Mishnah listed a bunch of different permutations if you did it in a different order. So one of them was if you do the Ola Sa'of, that's done for the sake of a chatos. Ola Sa'of, yeah. But if you do it in the way of a chatos, not for the sake of a chatos, if the Ola Sa'of is done in a similar way that a chatos is done, for the sake of an Ola. So you're doing an Ola, the Ola bird offering. However, you're bringing it in a way of the chatos, but you're chatos. So one big difference is that the chatos, you only have to cut one siman, one of the two tubes, the trachea and the esophagus. You only do one of them. However, the olas ha'ov, the fully consumed bird offering, you do a full malika. You do both of them. So you have an olas ha'ov. You're supposed to cut both 66b, the Gemara before the Mishnah. So if you did, let's say you switched. So instead of doing both, you did one. The shani b'mai. So ilem with the shani b'malika. If you switched and you did malika, you did both. You did one of the siman and one of the tubes instead of both. So then, look at the end of the Mishnah, which we're going to see is really the next Mishnah. Midikatani seifa kulan ein metam beisabliya umolin bahan nema delok Rabbi Yeshua. There's a Mishnah that comments on our Mishnah, all these cases, and it has the following statement. All of these invalidations, if you messed up the Ola Sa'of or you messed up the Chata Sa'of, they are not going to be Tameh. Now, background, we have something called an Avela. You take an animal, kosher or not kosher, not checked it properly. It's going to be an Avela, and it conveys Tumah, impurity, by touching it or by carrying it. A kosher bird that's not killed properly will be an Avela. What happens if you have a sacrificial bird that's killed in the wrong way? So instead of doing two tubes, you do one tube. Instead of one tube, you do two tubes. Things like that. So that the Mishnah says, or let's say you apply the blood below the red line or above the red line. All those things, it says on our Mishnah, there is going to be no tumah, but beis habliya. Beis habliya is really the throat. I think in this case, it's the throat. So it means that, okay, so one second. So the bird, nevela, one more thing, does not cause impurity through touching or carrying. An animal nevela, if you touch it or carry it, it's going to be impure. You'll be impure. However, a bird, a kosher bird offering, it's only if it goes into your mouth. That's what it conveys. If you eat it, then it conveys impurity. All the birds in our Mishnah that are invalid do not convey tumah. So just because you messed up in terms of your sacrificial, format of how to do it, it's not going to convey impurity. Fine. And it says umolin bahem, but there will be me'ilah. If you misuse that now, then it is going to be a problem.
So if it's credit for the carbon, you have to do
it. Right. So now, why is it relevant to us? We want to know, what did you change that it says from the Ola Sa'of that made it possible? So let's say you changed Malika. So the Ola Sa'of, you have to do both tubes and you only did one tube. The problem is that if that's true, then that line of the Mishnah that says there won't be any tumah conveyed through eating it, and there will be me'ilah, is not going to accord like the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. And we want the anonymous Mishnah to go according to everybody. Now, Rabbi Yeshua, we're going to get, they're going to have a lot of debates with Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, the whole next Mishnah, and most of the next Gemara. So, Rabbi Yeshua said like this: "The Rabbi Yeshua Amar Ein Molin But if it's Rabbi Yeshua, so then, according to Rabbi Yeshua, what's going to happen is like this. If you do a olas ha'of, but you slaughter it like a chatos, so then what's going to happen is it's going to transform into a chatos. We'll see more about that. According to Rabbi Yeshua, there should be me'ila here. Not that they're...
That would make a chatos different. Chatos by animals, you need this one.
So yeah, so according to him, this that we said about our Mishnah, that there will be me'ila, there will be misuse. According to Rabbi Yeshua, there shouldn't be misuse because it's going to become a chatos. Once a chatos is offered, you can use the meat. The meat goes to the kohanim. And the rule is going to be, I don't know if it's across the board, but a rule is going to be, once meat is available for consumption by the kohanim, there's no longer a violation of me'ila. The whole time that it is not fit for consumption, maybe because it's invalid, then there will be me'ila. So if you say that that is the interpretation of our Mishnah, so then it's not going to fit with Rabbi Yeshua. And we don't want that to happen. So there's another way to mess up the procedure of the olas ha'of, and that is the mitzui. When you, so by the chatasov, you have to sprinkle the blood and you have to spill the blood onto the altar. So let's say you didn't do that. Let's say by the I'm getting confusing which one does what. So the mitzui is done. 1 second. The mitzui is done by the... I think the sprinkling is the chatas and the mitzui. So let's say you have an olas ha'of and you switched in terms of the mitzui, in terms of the squeezing the blood out onto the altar, and maybe that's what causes the invalidation. So I guess if we're talking about an ola, how does it say it over there? An ola, you did both. You sprinkled and squeezed the blood.
Or just squeezing out the blood.
How did you change to a chatas? You did both.
No material.
So next line.
No, but you will rather say that this last passage refers to where he changed the proper procedure for Erla with regard to Malicha. And it will merge the first and last section. The first and last section refer to change.
No, you're good. That's right too far.
Oh,
yeah, man. I think the mitzvah is that the ola, you're supposed to just put the blood right onto the altar. The chatas, you have to sprinkle and put the remaining blood onto the altar. So if you switch from an ola to a chatas procedure, that's going to be what the Mishnah is saying is invalid.
Yeah. Bird, you don't get that.
I think the chatas,
the bird, you just have to hold it.
That's only the ola, not the chatas. Not the chatas. Right? Yeah. Ela b'mitzui. Yeah. So what's the mitzui? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, the chatas has a blood application and a squeezing out. The ola doesn't. So you did the ola, it's an ola, but you did sprinkling and squeezing out instead of just squeezing out onto the altar. If that was your shift, your switch, and that's what the Mishnah means, so then we're going to have a technical problem now. That would really fit, according to everybody, even Rabbi Yeshua. We're going to have a technicality in terms of the parallel of the Mishnah, of the Mishnayos. Let's see. A Maseifa. The end of the Mishnah, meaning the next Mishnah, is going to say, Ola Sa'of Sha'asa Lamata. The Ola Sa'of. So you have a bird fully consumed offering, the Ola Sa'of, which is supposed to be done above the red line, the blood, and you do it below. Kimai Sechatas. You do it like a chatas for the sake of a chatas. So you're taking an ola and you're doing it below the red line with a procedure. Now that's a vague term. Which procedure? You have two options. You either can deviate by doing only one tube, cutting only one tube instead of two, or you can deviate by sprinkling. So which one is it going to be? So on that it says, if you fully deviate from the ola to the chatas, you do it for the sake of a chatas and you do it in the procedure of a chatas, then we're going to see a lot about that coming up, is a big debate, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Eliezer, Omer Molden, it's invalid. You cannot bring it for consumption, and therefore it remains within prohibition of me'ila, of misusage. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, it's going to transform into a chatas. A chatas, once it's brought, you can consume the meat. Once there's a point of consumption to the kohanim, then there is no prohibition of me'ila. Now, that is the latter part of the Mishnah. So what is that referring to? How did you deviate? The shani b'mai. Ilema b'mitzui. If over there the deviation was with the sprinkling, you sprinkled instead of just fully pouring the blood from the olas oaf onto the altar, you did a little sprinkling too, like the chatas. So that is not going to fit because Rabbi Yeshua only says this big novelty that when you have an ola, sanctified for an ola, and you do a procedure for the sake of a chatas, it has to be that you did a malika, meaning you did one of the tubes that you slaughtered, then it'll transform into a chatas. But just deviating with the sprinkling, he never said such a novelty. So the end of the Mishnah has to be malika, the shani b'malika. B'mitzvah miyamar, Rabbi Yeshua never said this novelty, which we'll see more about coming up. So in 3 lines, he never said that by mitzvah. So the very next Mishnah cannot be referring to a deviation of a mitzvah. So what do you want to say? So keep it inconsistent. So just say like this: the ela b'malika ratio. So the ela b'malika. Maybe you'll say that the beginning, so to speak, meaning the middle of our Mishnah, is talking about malika, and then you'll say reisha v'seifa b'malika u'mitziyasa b'mitzvah. The end of the Mishnah, ela b'malika. The end of the Mishnah, the next Mishnah, is for sure talking about malika. So now what are you going to say? Reisha v'seifa b'malika u'mitziyasa b'mitzvah. You'll have the first part and the last part of the Mishnah, meaning the next Mishnah, are talking about malika. And our middle section in our Mishnah is talking about mitzvah. That's just not such a good parallelism. That's not so consistent. Says yeah. If that's your only problem, that's fine. Reisha v'seifa b'malika. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer are going to talk about malika. The beginning will be about malika. The middle case of the deviation of the ola to the chatas in our Mishnah will be talking about the deviation of the sprinkling. Instead of fully pouring the blood on, you're going to sprinkle it, and therefore that is the deviation in our Mishnah when it said that the ola sa'of is going to be like a chatas for the sake of an ola. It's going to be invalid. That's the case of where you deviate with mitzvah, with the instead of squeezing it all out, you do some sprinkling. Okay, so here we go. Next Mishnah, all the cases in our Mishnah, all the different permutations where you messed up the olas oaf and the chatas oaf, above the red line, below the red line, for the sake of the other one, you deviated in the procedure. All of them are not going to convey impurity, because impurity is going to be conveyed if you take a regular bird and you kill it improperly. Then it'll be a nevela, and it'll cause impurity by eating it. However, our case with sacrificial birds, there it's not going to, and it's not going to convey tumah, even though it's invalid. It's invalid. However, the rationale is, at the end of the day, you slaughtered it properly. You did a malika. You had the wrong bird in mind. You sprinkled the blood under the red string, but by doing the proper procedure, you removed it from its status, so to speak, of nevela, or you never let it get a status of nevela. Yeah, like a regular kosher bird would. Okay. However, umolin bahan, but there will be me'ila, because once they're invalid, so you can't do anything with it now. So it remains a holy offering that's invalid. So you're not allowed to consume it. If you can't consume it, it never had a moment of consumption, and therefore the prohibition of me'ila will apply. Fine, that's that. Except for chutz, which we just chutz mi chatas ha'of. If you have a chatas ha'of, a bird offering, sha'asolamata, instead of sprinkling the blood above the red line, you went below the red line. Kemaisa chatas l'shem chatas. So you did it below the red line. The procedure, which we already established, is going to be malika, and you had it for the sake of a chatas. So you did everything chatas to it. Below the red line, the slaughtering, you had in a 9 the chatas. It just happened to be, it was original sanctity was designated for an oath. There, what is that? For an ola. For an ola, thank you. For an ola, thank you. So in those cases, it's going to be kosher. We're going to see now, according to Rabbi Yeshua, it's going to be good, and therefore there will not be me'ila. There will not be me'ila. Yeah, but I don't think it's going to convey It's definitely not going to convey any tuma. It's not better than the other ones. But the question is going to be about its me'ila status. So it's interesting that the Mishnah starts with a headline and then it's going to repeat itself now. That's interesting. Okay. So, okay. No, I had it already. I'll have later. Thank you. Okay. So now, with this headline, now we're going to get into the debate, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer. And this is interesting, right? So you can leave it here in case people come in, they want to have maybe. So, okay. Ola sa'of she'asa lamata. You take your bird, Ola, and you sprinkle the blood below the red line, and you do the procedure, which is malika, instead of cutting both tubes, you only do one of the tubes, like a chatas. And you have in mind a sin offering, a chatas. So now there's a debate. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Molinba. Rabbi Eliezer says, just like the first case of our Mishnah, it's an invalid offering, and therefore there is me'ila, because let's think about it. In Ola, a fully consumed offering, right? So a fully consumed offering never has a point of consumption. So there's going to be me'ila. So whether it's valid or invalid, there's going to be a point of me'ila. A chatas offering, after it's valid, the kohanim can eat the meat. So then it's going to not have me'ila, which is a prohibition of misusing something holy. According to Rabbi Eliezer, this is a regular case of an Ola offering, even though you did all the chatas fulfillments below the red line, and you did only one of the tubes, and you had in mind the chatas, doesn't matter, it remains an invalid offering. And of course, there's going to be me'ila, there's going to be misusage. Rabbi Yeshua is the novelty. Rabbi Yeshua says, even though it was designated as an Ola, if you fulfilled all the chatas requirements, it's going to transform into the sanctity of a chatas. Therefore, you're allowed to eat the meat. The kohanim can eat the meat. Once it's allowed to be eaten by the kohanim, there's no longer me'ila. Probably because it belongs to the kohanim now. The meat belongs to the kohanim, and me'ila is misusing holy property. Once it belongs to the kohanim, so I'm assuming that's the rationale. Then there's no problem of misusing.
Was this a two-way street? Somebody who needs to bring a chatas and the spot is an Ola.
We'll see.
That person needs a kapara.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah, that might be true, but the question is, does it Yeah, let's see. So that's the first debate. Rabbi Eliezer be sure that an olas ha'of, which was brought with all the requirements of a chatas ha'of. Rabbi Eliezer is the simpler understanding that it remains just an invalid offering, and therefore there's no me'ila. Rabbi Yeshua is the novelty that it can transform into a chatas. So now they're going to have rationales back and forth, logic back and forth, which is going to be the rest of the Mishnah, is them arguing back and forth. So, it sounds like a board meeting. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so okay. Exactly. And I still fulfilled the rabbi's report from the gate. So 2 points. Yeah. So, So, okay. Rabbi Eliezer. Sorry. Rabbi Eliezer. Uma im chatas she'ein molen ba. Says Rabbi Eliezer. I'm going to prove you wrong. Why? Let's think about it. A regular chatas offering, which if done properly, there's no me'ila because now the meat can be consumed by the kohanim. However, we know from the very first Mishnah in Zebachim that it's one of the two offerings that everyone agrees to is going to be invalid if you have the wrong thing in mind. So ma'im chatas she'ein molen ba, you see it's lenient, that it's not subject to me'ila, to misusage. She'ein molen ba, lishma, you have to have the right intent. Kishishina eshma, once you have the wrong intent, you have in mind, let's say an Ola or a Shlamim or an Asham, Molinba, it will have a stringency that now there will be Me'ila. In Ola offering, where Shemolinba Lishma, Shemolinba and Ola, where it will be subject to Me'ila because it's fully consumed on the altar. No one can ever no human can consume it. It'll always be subject to Me'ila, which means it has a stringency that it always remains with the prohibition of me'ila. It has to be done lishma, that we know. Kishashina shma, eino dinshim oluba. When you change its name from an ola to a chatas, shouldn't it be logical that it should for sure have me'ila? If the chatas has a leniency, so for sure the ola should have the same leniency. That's Rabbi Eliezer's rationale to Rabbi Yeshua. I guess for this logic, yeah. For Lishma and other things, yeah, good question. So, Amar Rabbi Yeshua, no, not good logic. Why? Im Amers bechatos shashina eshma l'shem ola shekain shina eshma l'davar sheyesh bo meila. Tomar ba'ola shashina eshma l'shem chatos shekain shina eshma l'davar she'ein bo meila. Says Rabbi Yeshua, hold on, it's very different. A regular chatas offering, which is not subject to meila, if you change its name to an ola, let's say, meaning you have in mind an ola when you're slaughtering the chatas. In ola, there is no meila; it's stringent. So how can you compare that to our case? Our case is an ola offering, which you want to transform into a chatas offering, but an ola, where if you would have the wrong intent for a chatas has no meila. So your comparison is not good. You're going from a chatas to an ola, so that's very stringent because an ola doesn't have meila. However, in our case, what are you doing? You're going from an ola which doesn't have meila, and you're having in mind the chatas which does have an ola which does have the prohibition of meila. You're going to a chatas which does not have the prohibition of meila. So that's not a fair comparison to what you compare to our case. To that, Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer said, why not? Let's take kache kadashim. So let's say you have a chatas or an asham, or an ola, and what do? You slaughtered it in the south instead of in the north. That's where the lesser sanctity offerings are slaughtered. Let's say so you slaughtered in the south. The shachtan l'shem kachim kalim, and you had in mind the shlamim offering. Let that prove to you. Yochich, what's it going to prove to you? Shekain shina eshmam ledavar she'ein bo meila. You take an offering and you slaughter it for another offering which doesn't have meila. Let's say like a shlamim, and yet there's still going to be meila umolin bahen. So if you take what be an example? Let's say an ola offering kacha kadashim, and you slaughter it as a shlamim. So you changed its name, meaning you had in mind another offering, which does not have meila because a shlamim, once it's offered, can be eaten. And yet, what do we say? The rule is there's still meila. There's still meila. So, afata. So to you, Rabbi Yeshua, why are you so shocked? Al titma ala ola. Why? Don't be so shocked by an ola offering which has no meila. Afal pisha shina shma l'davar she'ein meila. If you change it to a chatas which has no meila, it'll still have meila. So meaning just basically right now they're arguing if you go from something which has no meila, which always has the prohibition of meila, and you have in mind something which the meila prohibition is removed. So let's say an ola to a shlamim you can eat. So after you do all the requisite steps, there's no more meila, and yet it's going to be invalid, and there will be meila. So to our case, by an ola sa'o, which always has meila on it, if you have in mind the chat and you do all the chatas requirements, says Rabbi Eliezer, it should still retain the prohibition of meila. That's Rabbi Eliezer. To that, Rabbi Yeshua says back, Amar Rabbi Yeshua, lo, that's not a good example. Why? Im Amars bekacha kadashim, you take a holy offering, let's say like the ola, sheshachtan bedarim, and you slaughter in the south. And you have in mind a lesser sanctity offering, like a shalom offering. V'shachtan l'shem kachim kalim. So shekain shina eshmam ledavar sheyeshvo iser v'heter. So there, those offerings have a point in time where there is going to be meila, and a point in time where there's going to be no meila. So, for example, let's say the shalom offering. So you have the sacrificial parts, the emurei, and the sacrificial parts go onto the altar. They cannot be consumed by anybody. So there's part of the offering which does have meila. The sacrificial parts that have to go onto the altar will always retain with the prohibition of meila. And if you take those sacrificial parts and misuse them, you're in big trouble. The other part of the offering that you can consume, the kohanim or the owners can consume, there's going to be no meila. So those kachim kalim, they have both aspects. Some parts of them are the sacrificial parts, remain with the prohibition of me'ilah. The other parts of them do not. Those are consumed. There's a point of consumption. There is no more me'ilah. Our case, Tomar ba'ola sheshina shma v'davar shekulo heter. In our case, you're taking an ola, and what are you doing? You're doing all the chatas requirements. A chatas, once it's offered, so then once it's all the chatas ha'of, once you do everything, you do the blood, the entire meat, there's no me'ilah because it's fully able to be consumed by the kohanim. So what are we saying? That it's more lenient. Rabbi Yeshua keeps saying your cases are more stringent. Your case of slaughtering a holy offering, the very holy offering, and trying to give it all the characteristics of a less holy offering is not a good comparison, because there, the kachim column always have a part of them that is still subject to me'ilah, the sacrificial parts that have to be put onto the altar that have no point of consumption. But our case here is a bird ola offering, which is done with all the requirements of a bird chatas offering. But once a chatas bird offering is done, that all the meat can be eaten by the kohanim. So there is no more me'ilah. So it's much more lenient. So Rabbi Yeshua says, over there, I'll agree to you. But over here, where it's more lenient, there I disagree. And it's going to transform into a chatas. Once it's transformed into a chatas, so then there will no longer be me'ilah, because the meat has a point of consumption to the kohanim. Therefore, if I go and I misuse the meat, it's not considered like I'm misusing the property of hektish, of the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, I'm just stealing from the Kohen. I'll have to, give back what I stole. Okay. So at the end of the day, after the whole debate back and forth, debate is an ola sa'o, a bird consumed offering, which you do everything like a sin offering. You do the blood below the red line. You only do one of the tubes for me'ilah, and you have in mind the chatas. Rabbi Eliezer says, regular invalid offering, therefore there is me'ilah because you cannot consume it. And Rabbi Yeshua says it transforms into a chatas offering, and therefore there will not be me'ilah because you are able to consume it. Good? Good-ish? Okay. Ish. Good. So, fine. Just to make it more exciting, Tanya, Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua. They keep going at each other. So Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua. Asham sheshachtu b'tzafon. L'shem shlamim. So an asham offering, which is slaughtered in the north. However, l'shem shlamim, you have in mind a shlamim offering. What's the halacha? As Rabbi Eliezer, let that prove to you that there should be me'ilah in these kinds of cases. Yochia, sheshina es shmo, you changed the name, meaning you had in mind the wrong offering. Umolinbo, and you were subject to me'ilah. After you did that, it becomes invalid, and now there is me'ilah. Ha'afata, you Rabbi Yeshua, don't be so shocked, don't be such in wonderment al ha'ola on your ola offering. Shahafal pisha shina shma shiyimaluba. When you change, and you have in mind the ola offering, that it should be that it's going to be also subject to me'ilah. It's just interesting. There's like one difference that keeps popping out to me. In our case, in our Mishnah, you're not just having in mind the wrong offering. You're doing everything like a chatas. So you're doing everything like a chatas. So, but like that wasn't Rabbi Shua's response yet. I don't know. It's just interesting. Maybe that'll be an answer right now. But
once we talked about the Ola, the Chatas, the Sullivan, they'll have the same four halacha.
Right.
Kabbalah, halacha, Rika.
Right.
And there, not like by the above the line or below the line.
So why should it make a difference? I mean, it's a difference. But why should it make a difference?
At what point is the lishma wrong?
When you have in mind the wrong sacrifice.
The Kohen who is bringing it.
Yeah.
And,
except for a chatas and erev Pesach.
So the older is the male, and not the female.
True. But in the halachas of invalidation, Rabbi Eliezer is saying, I keep proving to you that when I have the wrong thing in mind, it's invalid, and there is me'ilah. It doesn't take on the characteristics of the other offering. So that's now Rabbi Eliezer's rebuttal to Rabbi Yeshua. To that, Rabbi Yeshua says, I'm Rabbi Yeshua, look, im amers ba'asham, and you're bringing me an asham as an example, as a proof. Shim Shina Eshmo, Lo Shina Es Makoma. At the end of the day, in Asham, you change the name, meaning you had in mind the wrong offering, but Lo Shina Es Makomo. What does that mean? Oh, because you're sorry, you're doing it in the north. Yeah, thank you. You're doing it in the north, but you had the wrong thing in mind. Okay, so finally here we have this difference. Tomar ba'ola. In Ola, our Ola over here, your Shina Shma Vishina Makoma. You change its place, and you change, and you have the wrong thing in mind. I hear what you're saying. You're saying if you do one of the other offerings and you bring the other animal or something like that, that'd be a better comparison. That's what you need to say.
You really need a case with the same animal.
Right, same animal, yeah. But that might be just like knocked it off the bat, but just because you brought the wrong animal. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you can't bring it up that wrong.
Right, exactly. Right. You can't bring a person and call him an animal, right? And say, I'm bringing a chatas. So, yeah. So, even if you really want to, yeah. So, you go. I think that's what the footnote says. Yeah, G2G guys. Okay. So, fine. So that's to be sure that in our case, you're not just changing the intent, you're changing the place. You're offering it. You're sprinkling the blood under the red string. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so let's try again. Asham and Asham, which instead of in the north, you slaughtered it in the south. Sheshachtu b'darom l'shem shlamim yochia. That's fine. You take an Asham, which should be in the north, and you slaughter in the south for the intent of a shlamim. Let that be your proof. Let that prove to you. Yochiach shashina shmo v'shina makoma umolenbo. Still, if you change your intent and you change the place, it's just a regular invalid offering, and it will be subject to me'ilah. It doesn't become a shlamim. So to you, Rabbi Yeshua, al titma ala ola sha'af b'shina shmo v'shina makoma umolenbo. Don't be so shocked that our ola case, you change the intent and change the place, and there's still going to be me'ilah because it does not become a chatas offering. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, lo imam eslashem shishina shmo v'shina makomo v'lo shina es ma'asav. Says Rabbi Yeshua, you might have changed your intent and you might have changed the place, but you didn't change the way you slaughtered the offering. That's the same. The usher and the shlamim. Tomar ba'ola, our ola shashina shma. You change the intent. The es ma'aseha v'shina es makomo. If I should switch it, it should be. Yeah, it should be. Vishinas makoma, vishinas maaseh. That's the Vishinas maaseha. You change the act instead of doing two tubes of the bird. You only cut one. You only cut one tube. So there, in that case, it will become a chatas, and there will not be a me'ilah. And on that, so they add in word missing ishtik. On that rebuttal, Rabbi Eliezer was silent. He had no response. Yeshua got him. But every case you're giving me is not comparable to our case. Our case, you're changing the location under the red string. You're changing the intent to a chatas, and you're actually slaughtering it differently. You're only slaughtering one of the tubes. Once you do that, so then you did everything that a chatas is supposed to have, and therefore it's going to be a chatas. Now, the question is, why did Rabbi Eliezer not respond? Sounds like that's it. You win. What happened over here? So Amar Rava, the name Alei, let Rabbi Eliezer say the following. Asham sheshachtu b'darom. Let's say you have an asham, and you slaughter it b'darom in the south improperly. Vishinui bailim. So now, they change it? No. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Asham sheshachtu b'darom l'shem shlamim. For the intent of a shlamim. Vishinui bailim. So now you have in mind a different owner. So I guess let's say the Kohen doing it, even though the soul could. But let's say the Kohen does a shechita, and he has in mind somebody else. Fine. The shina sheshina shmo, vishinas makomo, vishinas maisa, umolenba. So that's funny. I mean, okay. So Rav is saying, why didn't Rabbi Eliezer say another more comparable case? In Asham, you slaughtered in the south like a shlamim. You had in mind a shlamim and b'shinui bailim. So b'shinui bailim, you had in mind the wrong owners.
First of all, this was supposed to be an ashram, and you better not have that person who was trying to get.
True. He needs a new kapara. Yeah, that's the first mission. Yeah, 100%.
We're just talking about
Me'ila.
Kosher is not off.
Right.
You're going to do it this one. Right. But now the question is, can it be moral with that?
Right. Right.
Well,
Correct. Does it become a shlama or remains an invalid ashram? So it's interesting here. The comparison to changing, like our case of the ola is, you slaughter instead of the 2 tubes, you'd only do 1 tube. He's saying the comparable case here is when you have the wrong owners in mind, which it's an interesting comparison because you're not doing anything differently to the animal.
and you change the garbage.
Right, but you didn't do anything really. Yeah. So why did Rabbi Eliezer not say this back to Rabbi Yeshua? Midelo kamar lehachi shma mina. You see from here, nochis Rabbi Eliezer l'taimei Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer literally means went down. I mean, he agreed. He agreed to the reasoning of Rabbi Yeshua in our case. The fact that he stopped arguing, he understood Rabbi Yeshua's rationale. It wasn't just a regular invalid offering, and somehow there was no me'ila. Up until now, Rabbi Eliezer understood that it's a very novel thing. There was some invalidation, and somehow there's no me'ila. So Rabbi Eliezer couldn't understand. But now that he didn't say this, he finally understood what Rabbi Yeshua was saying, which is the following. The Omer of Ada bar Ava, as Ada bar Ava explained Rabbi Yeshua, Omer Hayar Rabbi Yeshua, Ola Sa'op and Ola Sa'op, Ola Sa'op, which is supposed to be done above, sprinkling, but you do below, and you do it like a chatos, like a sin offering, l'shem chatos, for the intent of a sin offering. Kevan shemalak basimin echad. So here's the rationale of Rabbi Yeshua. It's not a regular invalidation that somehow magically transforms. Since Kevan shemalak basimin echad, since you cut one of the simanim, only one and not 2, so nimsheches v'nasis chatasa'o. It now literally pulls, it gets and transforms into a chatasa'o. And this you cannot say by any other example that Rabbi Eliezer brought. It's not going to work. Yeah. Now, how exactly this works, I'm not exactly sure how exactly the mechanics work. But it's somehow, even though it was designated as an ola, once you're doing everything for the sake of the chatas, and you take that and you do 1 tube, it sounds like it takes on the life of a chatas. You do everything that a chatas does. You would have thought just invalid. If it's an ola and you mess up, it's not an ola anymore. I don't know exactly. It's interesting. Yeah.
This is good, but hey, what to go with?
For your letter,
when you bring it,
we're going to see.
It's going to be for something. It's not just a stum. Oh.
Thing.
You can do stuff.
Mm-hmm. In ola also you can voluntarily do it. A non-Jew brings an ola. The Kohen takes that ola and does all this. Comes to chatas now. That's a great question. That's the answer. That's a good question. So my gut would tell me.
The whole thing is that.
You have to bring another one. If you're meant to bring a chatas, you'll let it. We're
going to see that in a second.
You have to go back and get another one.
But in our case, you're going to bring an ola. You're bringing an ola
for something,
and then it transforms into a chatas. So you have 2 issues. You have to bring your ola still, and how you bring in the chatas up.
I think so. By third time, if you have to bring an ola, it's not just voluntary.
Yeah. They're right.
So it's not going to work. I mean, it could be that you can do a procedure.
It says that it works.
The
mikos to the kohanim. There's no me'ila.
I know that it doesn't work to accomplish what the
original intent was.
The person has to bring another one.
Yeah.
Guessing for what the original objective.
Is that true? If I want to bring a chatas right now, I'm in the mood. I got excited. What happens?
You have to have done something that.
Really?
part
It's
of it.
zero kedusha. I can't imbue kedusha on animals as a chatas if I did nothing wrong. Not me. I do things wrong. Steve goes and volunteers the chatas.
No, you can't.
What happens with
you
offering?
You can't pull the mitzvah. You have to have had a vera that.
Comes Mr. Rosenberg with the answer. And there's what?
I believe it's funny.
Meaning what? You bring it for something else. It's no kedusha.
The lady who brought him didn't say which one they were.
That's coming up soon. That's coming up next. Yeah, that's coming up next. Yeah, that.
When they designated what they are,
Right.
then it's like all bets are off, and then they're bringing like some incredible numbers up the picture.
Yeah.
This
So
one and then this one and then that one, that one like
yeah,
that.
good. So Mr. Rosenberg is saying the case. There's a case on the next Amud where. Right. Yeah. So we're gonna have a case on the next Amud, which are definitely insane. Let's say you volunteer. Let's say you do owe an Ola and you didn't designate which one is which, right? And that's
the recommended. That's the
recommended.
Yeah.
You don't say anything. You just buy two birds.
Okay.
You give them the coin and say, "It's up to you. You do what you want."
So we'll see that. Yeah, we'll see that.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Their problem is they said what it was.
Yeah.
They didn't, but they said what it was after they bought it, but before they bought it, like the whole.
Right. And I guess we'll see that later. But the regular case now, regular Ola. Okay. Let's see.
I think Priest has talked about this. Can I bring a contest to the insurance policy? Contest is something on top.
We'll stop here. And,
Are we ahead or?
no, we're behind.